What's up, Brandon? What's going on? I hope people saw that I wasn't going to be able to go live this afternoon because Sedepal sucks. But I'm here this evening. I'm here. I am still alive. I survived Sedepal. I survived the Sedepal in Villa El Salvador. Biden is coming. As is Xi. As is Justin Trudeau. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Will, what's up? How are things? So, yeah, 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes. Yeah. I thought about it, and then I was like, I may spend a lot of time live during APEC, like on here, but yeah, I won't be on the ground. Just the logistics of it were going to be far too difficult. So I'm here, and I will be talking about it the whole time, obviously, but the logistics were just going to be a bit of a nightmare. So I am here instead. Because yeah, the significant other is working during that period, so during the time, so because she works like from home, so there's no like work holiday for those people. They work anyway. Depending on what you put it in, not a bad idea. Although it'd be probably safer for you if you put it into Canadian corporations that operate in Peru. That'd be the safest bet for you, Will. And the easiest, honestly. So, like, if you could find like a Canadian mining ETF or mutual fund, that'd probably be the safest bet for you. Oh, yeah. It's bringing in some money, but not like, and it will attract some foreign investment, of course. But I mean, we'll have to see. Okay. So we're about ready to get going here on TikTok and YouTube, both. Yep. Doing that. So, first thing when I woke up this morning, I posted video and I forgot to subtitle it, and I apologize, of the confirmation that Justin Trudeau will be attending the APEC summit, and that creates an interesting situation. What's up, Donnie? Where you're going to have Xi and Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden together at APEC. And there's some tension there. And I don't think anybody has tension with Joe Biden per se. Like maybe minor stuff between like the US and China in terms of trade. But like overall, everybody's kind of chill. That's fun, Will. Everybody's kind of chill with Joe at this stage, especially since Biden is a lame duck president, and there's not a lot he can do to change the relationship, regardless of what goes on at APEC. But it does create an interesting situation because you have tension between the countries, and obviously that's going to be sort of looked at over the course of the summit. People are going to pay attention to it. They're going to pay attention to how Xi and Trudeau interact in particular, probably more than anything else. I don't think so. Don't think he will. I don't think Modi will be there. I don't see any reason why he would be. So the interesting thing is that both the US and Canada have 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles, right? They are trying to protect their domestic car manufacturing. And so they decided, let's put 100% tariff on the vehicles. Fine. That's their, they feel that that's in their national best interest. It makes sense. Okay. But it's not like China likes that. China doesn't like that because what they're doing essentially, what the U.S. government is doing is they're protecting the major manufacturers like the Fords, the GMs, the Stellantis, which is Dodge, essentially. So they are protecting those automakers, but they're also protecting companies like Tesla, right? And that's big competition for Chinese electric vehicles, and it gives Tesla then a leg up in the largest car market still, although China is soon to be I think, if not now, soon to be the largest car market in the world. But it gives Tesla an advantage over the Chinese manufacturers, and of course China doesn't like that. At the same time, Canada doesn't like Donald Trump. And I'm not talking about individual people, I'm talking about as a government, they do not like Donald Trump. They do not like Trump because Trump has threatened to put additional tariffs on Canadian goods, which would hurt Canadian manufacturers, and they don't want that to happen. And so, as a result, the Canadian government has threatened that if Trump were to tariff them, that Canada would increase their trade with China to offset that loss. And so that's a balancing act for Trudeau to run there, because he's got to act like your Chinese electric vehicles are sort of a threat to us. And at the same time, he also has to try to engage in trade talks that are going to potentially increase Chinese trade down the line. Now, fortunately, for all three of them, this is not the only time they will meet. They will also meet at the G20 summit in Brazil. So they have lots of time together to talk, to sit down, have a nice lunch, and hash out their whatever difficulties there are. Although it's going to be difficult for all of them with, of course, Trump not yet president and therefore not present. And so, like, how does that play out for them? in terms of working through trade issues that we know all three countries have. But it's going to be interesting that Trudeau is there. The other thing is, like, for Peru, Canada is a huge trade partner. Billions of dollars in Peruvian minerals for the most part, but there's billions of dollars in Peruvian exports to Canada. Gold, copper, and zinc, the three largest, right? But also very valuable. So it's sort of in dollar amounts that they're going to outweigh other products. But Canada is also a destination for a lot of Peruvian agricultural products, and surprisingly, because Canada does have a fishery, obviously, there is a significant amount of like fish meal, for instance, that gets exported to Canada. And so Canada is important all the way around. Now, Seb, who I saw come in here, I think it was Seb. Sonnenschein. Yeah, Beb Sonnenschein, and I will mess that up. Pointed out in the comments that, like, Canada just sort of like comes in and takes the minerals and fucks off, which is, in pardon my language if you don't like that, but not really all that wrong. So this is also something that Trudeau is going to have to work on while in Peru, is the Canadian reputation. Generally speaking, Canada has a very good reputation around the world. You know, individually, Canadians are very nice. They're good tourists to have. They spend money, but they aren't regarded as being like the obnoxious types, right? But for the mining corporations, it's entirely different. Canadian mining corporations are seen as like ruthless, oftentimes engaged in illegal acts. There has been intimidation and violence against indigenous groups in Peru by Canadian mining corporations. What happens is they pay off local police in Peru. The police actually commit the act of violence in most cases, and then, like, everything just goes away. But the Canadian mining corporations also have a strong tie to Dina Boluarte. You can look into that yourself, because that's an entire rabbit hole you will want to maybe go down one day. I have lots of good things to say about Peru. Do you, Eric? But yeah, so Trudeau's going to have to work on that relationship with Peru. Not just the Peruvian government, but like with Peruvian people. I think he's going to have to work on how he can possibly ingratiate himself to Peruvian people, because Peru is an important trading partner for Canada. And unfortunately for the government of Canada, the mining corporations don't do anything good to help that. They just don't. They do a lot of damage in Peru environmentally, but also socially through their intimidation of locals. There's a YouTube is usually pretty far behind. After that, I was off to the CEDEPAL offices in Villa El Salvador, so my sort of reporting was limited from that point on. But the next video we put up was Wilfredo Oscarima. He of Rolex watch fame. Yeah, Peruvians are very friendly. Oscarima was caught up, of course, in Dina Boluarte's Rolex situation. And then a new allegation emerged that Oscarima purchased 3 designer Italian dresses worth approximately $700 using funds from the Ayacucho government and from his position, doing so in his position as Ayacucho governor. Yeah, he is alleged to have provided those 3 dresses worth roughly $700 to Dina. They, of course, were taking part in a council of governors, essentially. Okay, and he had a 1 hour scheduled meeting at the government palace with Dina, and that is when it is alleged that said dresses were provided to Dina. He had purchased those dresses earlier in the day in Circo, and so that's why it is alleged that he provided Dina with the dresses, which would then be on top of the Rolexes. So, like, keep a tally of the money there because it's a lot. So now everybody's denying it. Everybody's saying it didn't happen, of course. So the only real way to know if it even happened would be to like search Dina Boluarte's wardrobe. Nobody's going to go do that. So we will not know for sure, but the allegation is now out there that Oscarima was, providing continuous bribes to Dina. So it's very nice of him. It seems like he gives good gifts. I should be his friend and maybe I'll get a nice watch. So I haven't published this one on the website yet because it's not really a big enough story, but I did post on here. Just a second, I'm going to turn on a light. And that is today. Today there was a crash of a small airplane / ultralight in San Bartolo. You've probably seen the video on TikTok or maybe on YouTube, because, well, every news agency posted the video, which I think was taken by one of my downstairs neighbors. Yeah. If you watch the video, or at least part of the video looks like it was taken by one of my downstairs neighbors. Another one is taken from somewhere on the other side of the bay, I think. So at Playa Norte is where I think the videos were shot from in San Bartolo. So if you see the videos, the plane / ultralight, like, I don't know if the pilot lost control or what happened. I have been told that there was an engine problem, that the engine exploded, although, like, what that means by exploded, because there was no explosion on the video, right? So, like, the engine failed, something happened, and as a result, sort of lost control. The pilot banks hard to the left, avoiding the houses of San Bartolo, but stays over the ocean and sort of circles around, and then eventually, like, just runs out of altitude and crashes into the ocean on the other side of San Bartolo. Although I was a little bit concerned when initially watching the video that he was going to bank left and take a hard turn into my building, which would have been not as fun for me or them. 2 people were injured in the crash. By the time I got back to the building, I went out back and I looked over the ocean to look at the crash site, and there were still a few boats out, but everything looked like it had been cleaned up. And so nothing more there, just two people injured. Um, I've seen other publications sort of assign um, inexperience or error to the pilot. I mean, I've also been told though that there was engine failure. So, um, of course, I'm being told by people who like live here, right? So I don't know how much of it is accurate, but that's from like witnesses who were watching it happen. That they think that there was like an engine thing that went on there, and that's what caused the plane to lose control. Um, so two people injured in that, obviously the pilot and a passenger, and because it was a very small, very small plane, and but all cleaned up in San Bartolo, and everybody was back out surfing and fishing and diving and all of that stuff. So other than that, no issues for San Bartolo. Let me come around to opposition to the APEC education shutdowns are growing. So that's now a thing even in Congress. Now, obviously not from like the major parties. Okay, so Fuerza Popular and Peru Libre have obviously like no problem with this because they need to protect Dina, of course, but the unaligned Congress people or members of smaller parties are continuing to sort of push their narrative over the last couple weeks, and especially going into APEC. And so today it was Flor Pablo's turn, and as an unaligned congresswoman, she was heavily critical of the planned shutdown of educational institutions over APEC. She's obviously not alone in that. Earlier or last week, we had the former ministers of education speak out saying they don't like it. You've had university leadership speak out, say they're not going to follow the shutdown order, and it's just sort of grown. You have municipal leaders, like mayors within Lima, who are saying they're not going to follow it or don't support it. And so at this point, as I said in the video I posted earlier, I don't know how successful that shutdown of the educational institutions is going to be and who's going to comply with it. Obviously, I don't think like the public institutions have much of a choice, but there are a lot of private institutions in Lima, including universities, and so them complying with the order, I am not so sure is going to actually happen. And then the last thing I want to get to is, if you follow my personal account as well, and I know some of you do, you know that a few days ago I ran into a story of women being targeted within bars and taxis in Miraflores, and trying to run down leads on it, and having conversations with people and trying to find people who knew anything about it. And I've had some conversations, and I have some details from my original conversation. And I don't, and I've said previously on my own page that I don't think it's at the point yet where it's ready as a story to be published on the Pensante website or to put together like a real in-depth video. But I want to make sure, given the amount of information that I have, that people are being very cautious in Miraflores with just with their security. Just be safe. Because like I've heard all sorts of things, like you can't even trust the even the taxi, like the bigger taxi companies. Now I always use Satelital, like unless I'm in like an absolute pinch, I use Satelital in Lima. But and I've never had a problem. But obviously I'm a 6'2" white guy. I'm not going to have the same problems as small Peruvian women emerging from a bar to get a cab, right? So be very careful. Be careful with your drinks to make sure drinks don't get spiked, or have Rufalin dropped in them. Just be careful, because there is a significant issue there. Details of which, like some of which I have, but yeah, I don't drink, so I don't. Well, yeah, I wouldn't really have that problem. But I mean, this is Peru. People drink socially. They drink with friends. It's a thing, and you should be able to do that without fear that you're gonna get a roofie in your drink and then be knocked out in a cab for hours on end while the cab driver robs you. Right? So you should be safe there. So that's where I wanted to leave that, and I'll go back to some of the questions here. Am I having trouble getting conversations because of the language? No, not really. I mean, I think like probably in terms of like how many people see the video and then realize that I'm looking, that I wouldn't have been in contact with anyway. Yes, I think that's probably a bit of an issue. But in terms of people responding and whether or not I can have a conversation with people, no, I don't think so. I don't, like, not a major issue anyway. What do I think about my security? Do I have to think about it before I go out? I don't think about it before I go out. I have no concerns with my security. None. I'm, again, though, a 6'2" white dude, like 6'2" former military gringo. I don't feel threatened anywhere here. But I can understand why people would, right? Like, I posted the video that I was in, like one of the videos I posted while I was in Villa El Salvador. Somebody commented and said it's a red zone, which I mean is true. It is a red zone, but I mean, I don't feel threatened in Villa El Salvador. I've never felt threatened in Villa El Salvador. I'm actually kind of proud of Villa El Salvador for everything that it's become. What's up, Lena? How are you doing today? Villa El Salvador, I know a lot of people don't know this, Villa El Salvador was a planned invasion. Right? It was a planned expansion of the city. Yeah, it was planned. And the people there, yeah, they're like on the poor side, but they work hard. And generally speaking, they're good people. And of course, we know there are street gangs and stuff like that within Villa El Salvador. None of us are blind to that reality. But I think Villa El Salvador gets generally a bad rap compared to other places. Okay, like there are definitely much worse places in Lima than Villa El Salvador. Much worse places, right? It's very hardworking, blue collar people, and yes, that means lower incomes and lower education levels and stuff along those lines. But it's overall, it's a like I'm actually kind of proud of what the El Salvador has made itself into. And do I speak Spanish here? Well, not on here, like not on my social media, but like in Peru, I do. Do you live in El Salvador? No, I do not live in El Salvador. I live south of El Salvador. Um, my wife worked on the project that was El Salvador when El Salvador was being created and planned. And that's what I say. I'm proud of El Salvador for being what it is. Because if you look around Lima, there are, yeah, it's a while ago. Yeah. But if you look around Lima, there are a lot of some sort of former invasions, right? Where once upon a time they were houses that started off basically as like scrap wood and cardboard structures, and now you've got something else there, right? They just sort of slowly grow up over time, and they're always disorganized. They have water issues, they have electrical issues, they have serious engineering issues, and El Salvador isn't one of those places, right? It is planned, and yeah, it's not great. I think we all acknowledge that, like, you're not gonna go in there and like search for your. It's not like it's not anybody's like ideal place to live. Maybe, yeah, you live in Caraballo. There's no water here. Yeah. And like that's it's pumped there from cisterns. Yeah. Yeah, and it's because the government didn't plan for those sorts of invasions to occur in the first place. I don't know why they didn't, but they didn't. And as a result, you had all these places that were like large neighborhoods left without water or electricity for a long time, and then electricity would come, and then like eventually water would come, but the water would only come once the city had formalized it's not fucking easy. And those people who live in those parts of the city, they work fucking hard, and they deserve credit. They deserve credit for the amount of work they do, for the fact that they save money to build houses that house their family and keep themselves safe. They deserve credit for that. You not like those neighborhoods, you can feel they're unsafe for you, and I sort of understand where somebody would be coming from if they said that. But you also need to acknowledge that those people work incredibly hard to get where they are, and they deserve credit for it. Hola, Cape Hasa, Rocky Hills, yeah, and having to plant the trees so that you stop like hills from sliding down. Yeah. The problem is there hasn't been traditionally in those areas any real engineering done. And that means that if Lima gets a large enough earthquake, and some people believe it's coming, it's right around the corner. There's an 8.8 right around the corner. That you could see 100,000 people in Lima die as a result of a major earthquake because of the lack of engineering and the lack of engineering standards on buildings around Lima. And that's a real problem that needs to be addressed, because That's way too many people. It's way too many. And I'd actually be shocked if the number's not higher at this point in terms of the potential fatalities if there was a major earthquake. It just would depend also where the earthquake struck in particular, but I mean that's not good for Lima. It's not good for Peru in general, right? Because a lot of those people who are living in those sort of newer invasions, as a lot of people call them, they come from the provinces, right? So their families are back in the provinces. They're here in Lima, or their family, their portion of the family has moved to Lima, right? For whatever reason. Sometimes it's for opportunity, work, employment, income. Sometimes it's those sorts of things, and sometimes it's that they lived in a bad situation in the province, and now they've moved on to Lima to find safety. And unfortunately, at the same time, those same neighborhoods are consistently year over year over year in states of emergency because the national police is not too keen on doing their job. In fact, there's a story that I haven't gone to, but I read some of it. They work on teams, in teams on Sundays to build their own paths, sports courts. Yeah, like everything. Like the parks, like everything. They work together to try and like make an actual nice area to live in. And I don't get a whole lot of support. But so yeah, I was saying I did see it pop up that, and I think it was from Corto Poder last night about like the audio tapes showing PNP actually protecting members of Los Pulpos, driving them around in official vehicles. That's the sort of support that people in those neighborhoods get, where the gangs are supported by the police. Like Los Pulpos is a big enough gang, it's a big enough problem for Peru that they are known in other parts of the world. It's not just something where, oh, I've heard of Los Pulpos because I'm from Peru. It's like, no, like people outside of Peru, outside of South America, have heard of Los Pulpos because it's that big of an issue. You own a house there. You moved 2 years ago. The worrying part is that there's no regulations. Yeah, that is always this underapproach. Yes, local government has always, because there's not a tax base, so they don't care. So even if you were to come to a place like, so as I think most of you are aware now, especially since I commented that the airplane that crashed today looked like it was going to hit my building. Most of you, I think, are aware that I live in San Bartolo, right? And the problem is that there's a lot of people who don't pay taxes. Something like 11% of the population, of like the tax-paying population of San Bartolo, has paid their taxes. And there's a reason why they don't, because if you just wait 3 years, it's going to get forgiven anyway. Right? So those people don't pay their taxes, which means the municipality then can't invest, because it's not like the municipality has money. They need you to pay taxes for them to have money. Yes, Norma, we're aware. All of us are aware. Yes. In fact, if you read articles, even in English language media, although you'd have to go to like the very left wing English language media at this point, um, you can read articles about the silent genocide occurring in the Amazon as a result of oil exploration and oil leases within oil exploration leases in the Amazon. Yeah. Yep. And even here, there's not many people in my area that nobody pays taxes. They inherit homes, they don't pay taxes for them, but like you should be paying taxes every year regardless. It has nothing to do with whether or not you inherited the house or not, right? You should be paying property taxes every year. That's what allows the municipality to function, right? And at the same time, you'll have those same people complain, well, why is the sidewalk broken? Well, because the sidewalk's broken because nobody pays taxes. The sidewalk's going to stay broken because nobody pays taxes. When 11% of your population pays their taxes, of course shit's broken. Like, you're gonna have people who forget to pay taxes in a given year, or who are unable to pay taxes in a given year, and that I completely understand. People go through tough times. People like have emergencies that come up. They have things that occur in their life, and so like, you know what? I didn't pay the taxes this year, and I completely fucking understand. But if people don't pay their taxes, then there's not going to be development in your small community. That's good, Elizabeth, because I'm not saying they should be first. I'm not saying they should be first. Like, but obviously, like, take care of yourself first. Make sure that you're fine first, right? But you should be paying taxes. And like, you can't be one of these people who lets it go for 3 years knowing that the municipality is going to forgive the tax burden, because, or they're just going to be happy with anything you do give them, right? So like, say your taxes for the year, I'm just going to use a number, are like 2,000 soles for the whole year. Okay. And you go 3 years. Well, you would think now that you would have a bill of 6,000 soles, except you don't, because you could just show up and be like, I can't do that, but I have 500. And they're going to say, yep, we'll take 500 because we need the money so badly, because nobody pays their taxes. Right? Like, you should be concerned about the growth and the security and the livability of your neighborhood. You should care about your neighbors, not just you. You're also your neighbors, and like how you all get to enjoy the neighborhood, and that the neighborhood is safe, and it's safe for your kids, right? Yeah, it's more of a requirement in urban areas, but like, it's something that happens. Like, you don't need to go that, and this is something I will tell people consistently when it comes to like government function. You don't need to go far out of Lima, and then all of a sudden, like, people aren't really paying taxes that much at all, right? Or you get people who have like 3 homes and like don't, like, they pay taxes on their principal home in Lima, wherever it is, and like, say, we'll stop picking on San Isidro, and we'll say that their principal home is in Surco, right? So they'll pay taxes on their home in Surco, and then they'll forget that, yes, they also have to pay taxes on their home in Cienilla, and they also have to pay taxes on their home in, I don't know, Asia, we'll say, just for shits and giggles, right? But Like they forget that, oh yeah, I'm supposed to pay taxes on the other houses too. I just only pay taxes on the one in Serco. For owning their house close to Coma City Hall. Yeah. Jungler if tax excluded. Some people, yes, and in some people are tax excluded. It depends on like a lot on various things. But I mean, yeah, not everybody in the Sierra is tax excluded, right? It's not like you go to Hunan and they say, well, you're in Hunan now, no taxes. Or it's not like, oh, you're in Ancash, no taxes. Right? Like there's still taxes. Oh, it's just if you fall into certain groups, yeah. Otherwise, I would purchase something in Iquitos and never have to pay anything ever. Yeah, that's in a lot of cases that is true. They do not pay taxes. They may pay some sorts of like fees and licensing to the government, but yes, a lot of time in order to attract international investment, they will not charge the international corporation taxes. But what they will say is like, we won't charge you tax if you build this road or if you do this thing for us. Not a problem. No taxes. You just have to build this road. And if you're a mining company, not a problem. You have all that equipment. You're just gonna bulldoze a path to the mining site, and you're done. They're more apt to do that if you own a small bodega. Yes. Did you find out that they gave abortion to children? Doesn't surprise me if that happened. Doesn't surprise me because laws grant big companies that. Yes, they do. They do grant big companies, and like there's a lot of corruption that goes on there too, right? It's not like there's not corruption there. There's a lot of corruption there. There's a lot. Where are you from? Like originally, I was born in California, raised in Canada, and now I live in Peru, south of the Metropolitana. Right, but yeah, the corrupt relationship between the big businesses of it's not just lobbying though. The corrupt the corrupt relationship between the big businesses of Peru. So I mean, like, the Base Pay family of businesses, like the Romeros, Intercorp. That I mean, those big businesses. The corrupt relationship between them and the government is a real problem. It is a real problem, and it's not just like the national government. It's also municipal governments, regional governments. It's all of it. Why did you decide to move down here? The wife's family is from here. Vivimo. I don't know that I am a stickler for words have definitions. And so is it a dictatorship right now? No. Is it authoritarian though? Yes. But is it a dictatorship? No. But it is authoritarian in a lot of ways. Yet the system can't fight the corruption because corruption is the system. Exactly. That's exactly what the problem is. And that's from top to bottom. So like we'll pick on the central government, the national government a lot here because it's the most obvious stuff, right? Like we know like how highly corrupt Dina Boluarte is. It's like how do you even deny it? Like she's incredibly corrupt. But you'd be seriously mistaken if you think that like corruption doesn't occur at all the other levels, right? There's corruption with mayors within Lima. There's corruption with mayors, with governors, with mayors, with everybody. Like they're all council people, they're Congress people. They're all corrupt, right? They all partake in it, and they are a reflection of society. Exactly. Because society, like the Peruvian society is so used to functioning with corruption as part of the system. I think it comes from the military dictatorship years. It's just been sort of in society since then, at least. That like society's just so used to it that at the lower level, it's like you don't even pay attention to it. It's not until you get to the national government level that you start to go, oh, wait, corruption's bad. You shouldn't be corrupt. Meanwhile, you bribed a police officer last week. As if they lived in a bubble. Yeah. Yes, they do live in a bubble of privileges. All of that is true. They do. They know the damage they are doing to the country. They believe that what they are doing is right. Yes, they do. They genuinely do. Like they do actually believe that they are producing some change for Peru that's actually good. And the problem with it is that like Peru to an extent is always going to get better. It's always going to get better. And it's always going to get better because I don't think the people of Peru would ever allow it to get worse. Right? Like there's also a baseline within Peruvian society where like society says it's allowed to get this bad, but it can't go here. Right? So they're always going to keep it moving forward. The Peruvian people make that happen. The government does not. Right? So, like, as much as there's also that built-in corruption that's within society because it's just everybody in Peru is just sort of used to that's just how it is, right? There's also like this built-in safety valve of, I mean, like, yeah, okay, I'll bribe the officer with like this amount of money, with like 50 soles, but I won't give him 75. That's too much, you know? So there's always like a sort of safe space there that Peruvian society has created. How is the corruption in the police in the USA? It's all like police are corrupt. Police are corrupt in Canada. Police are corrupt in the United States. Police are corrupt all over the place. Police have power and authority, and that allows them to be corrupt. Where am I from? Born in California, raised in Canada, live in Peru. But they don't have yape in Canada. They do not have chape in Canada. They do not. They use other things, but not chape. You have like email money transfers and yeah. But most people shop with their card in Canada. It's just tap to pay. You just tap and you're done. So that's true though. They do not have chape. No chape. And no clean. None of it. They carry body cameras. In the US? Yeah, but they have to turn it on. I don't like. How is it that people think? How is it that people could possibly think that Dina's a good president? I don't. I don't even know. How do you come to that conclusion? What's going on? Yeah, like it's I've tried to explain the different types of corruption between the between different countries, and like the only way for me to explain it is just like the corruption in the US and Canada is just more advanced. So you're not gonna, it's more hidden, it's like worked into accounting and stuff like that. It's also, so it's just different. Yeah, they're just harmless little bribes. It's not like I got anything for that bribe. Oh, when you talked to one of the ministers close to Dina. Yeah. I mean, it, what am I doing in Peru? My wife's family's from Peru, so we moved here to be closer to her family. Uh, um, um, I think with the legislative changes, I'd actually be surprised if she goes to jail. I would be sort of surprised if she goes to jail. And for anybody who's tuning in on YouTube, by the way, I'm sort of pointing more that direction, but that's only because I'm reading and interacting with the TikTok live. I apologize. But it's not like many people watch on YouTube. They watch it later. It's the weirdest thing. It's like they wait for it to be saved and then they watch it later. Um, but yeah, I do. She should go to jail. She deserves to go to jail for what she's done. But I think with the legislative changes, it's going to be hard to make it happen. At least not quickly. She will, I think, eventually. But it's going to be one of. It's going to be one of a situation that's much more like Alejandro Toledo. It's going to be drawn out for years, and you're finally going to get her to jail on further corruption. But I mean, it's going to take forever, right? So don't expect that it's going to happen tomorrow or something like that, or don't expect that it happens like a month after she's out of office. It's going to take time, and it's going to take investigations, and like like I sort of have a similar opinion to Peru in that respect as I do with the United States, which is that like the joke about the United States is in the US they'll always do the right thing after trying everything else first. Right? And in Peru it's sort of like, yeah, Peru will do the right thing after ignoring it for forever. It's not even that they're trying other things, they're just ignoring it. Like, yeah, we know she's corrupt, but we're just ignoring it for now. You're tapping like crazy. Thank you for the likes, because it pushes the algorithm, and we need to push the algorithm because, and I don't know how many times I have to do this speech, but I will keep doing this speech. Peru needs English language news. Needs English language news. I know Lena knows why. I know Donnie, who's now over on YouTube watching, even though he's also in here watching, he knows why. And other people in here, Brandon, if he's still in here, he knows why. I do this from home. I live in San Bartolo. I'm like literally like the laptop. One of my laptops is perched on the kitchen counter, and then we've got like a sort of table set up, like a fold down table sort of deal. Like, so it's almost like a bar, like almost like bar seating. And so I have one laptop right there. I have another laptop right there. The phone's right there. right? That's how it's based right now, right? And yes, from YouTube you can see the beach view. Well, you don't really see the like you don't see the beach. You see the lights. You see the lights of Punta Negra. Like congratulations. But yeah, what's the biggest cultural shock that you faced in Peru? Like it's Peru is not much of a culture shock for me. Like honestly, it's not. There's adaptations, of course, right? Because, but it's not a culture shock to me. But I like the language is an issue, but I mean, I wasn't shocked by it. I knew everybody spoke Spanish. I just knew I didn't really, right? Traffic, a little bit, but like I still have family in Southern California, which has bad traffic. It's not quite Lima, but like it is Southern California. So and like I lived in Eastern Ontario, and so like Toronto was right there, and Toronto is a city of like 8 million. Like the whole thing is about 8 million, and so yeah, traffic wasn't too big of a shock. It's a little bit worse here, but it's not like horrible. And I lived in South Korea, so like Seoul, South Korea is a very big city. Traffic there isn't exactly pleasant, and I've driven there. Um, but um, but the one advantage Seoul does have is that it has public transit. It has a subway network, right? Um, that's what like Lima needs a damn subway network. And and like in terms of like the language, well, I've lived in South Korea where they speak Hangul, Korean, or like I was deployed to Kandahar and to Baghdad, and so like the language part, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to know the language, but I'll adapt, or I'm not going to be fluent in the language, but I'll adapt, right? I know, like, I obviously knew some Spanish, but not not enough, right? But you pick it up as you go along, and so it wasn't really a culture shock. It was just a okay, well, this is something I have to do now. Uh, does it does it need a remodeling of the whole social structure? Like it's followed by a question, but it's with a question mark, but it seems like a statement, and it needs it needs a societal awakening, is what it needs. Well, every Lima mayor says it's a major priority, right? The issue is funding, and the issue around funding is corruption. Which president was it that was like supposed to like invest so much in the metro line and then just walked away with the money? Which one was that? Yeah, Alan Garcia. And what did you do with Alan Garcia? You returned him to power. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't like they have this big thing about, especially with Via Express Sur or whatever they're calling it. Yeah, I don't think that's actually going to solve as much as they think it is. They're like, oh, it's going to cut 20 minutes off your drive. Like, no, it's not. Have you driven anywhere in Lima before? You don't cut 20 minutes off a drive in Lima. You end up with more cars on the road. What about the provinces? The provinces' problems are fucking huge. and I sort of wonder about some of them. Like the problem, the reason we talk about Lima a lot is because it ends up as social, as like centralized. Everything's centralized, and a lot of decisions about the provinces get made in Lima. And then because it's of course the half the population lives in Lima, it seems like well then half the people on TikTok at least live in Lima. But I have a serious question um, about Ayacucho and Oscorima and Dina Boluarte and what the items were for. In LA the traffic is insane. It is. Um, but I have real I have like real questions about what was the sort of deal between Oscarima and Dina that involved her getting Rolexes and dresses, because that's not cheap, right? The dresses, that's not that bad. I'd actually be willing to forgive the dresses. It's like to me, like it's not really that much money, but um, but the Rolexes, and so when you put them together, you're like, oh, that's a big deal, right? And then you see that like the special operations of the national police has been engaged recently in Ayacucho to dismantle cartels, the narco traffickers. And so I'm like, what is like what's the actual agreement? Because like there's a few options there. Like either, and hear me out on this, Oscarima is not a bad guy, but he's bribing her to get her to protect his his uh, his region, right? So like you have that option. He's not actually a bad guy, but he is corruptly getting assistance, right? That's an option. That's still an option. It's unlikely, but it's still an option, right? And then there's like, then there's like, do you see where I'm looking at it and going, what were the payments actually for? Because he's the governor, so like, but but the question isn't like, yeah, he has money. Why? Because you would use the government funds because you don't want to use your own, right? That's how corruption works. Don't use your own money. It's sort of like a drug dealer. Don't use your own product, right? But like, what is the actual arrangement there between Dina and Oscarima? I because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But there you could create a million conspiracy theories about it. You can even create conspiracy theories out of that relationship where Dina Boluarte is not a bad person. And we all know that's wrong, right? Or at least like that she's not like truly like this evil corrupt, like, this bad corrupt person. But like, what is the action? I genuinely would love to know what exactly is going on there. because we focus on the corruption, but we're not focusing on why the corruption. Yeah, he gave it to other politicians too. Yeah. It's just one of those things where I'm like, it could be that he's not put in jail or investigated again yet. It could be that. It could be a lot of things, right? I think the jail investigated thing is at least part of it. At least part of it, right? Because we know the for some reason the PNP seems to really, like, I don't know if they support Gina, but they do her bidding for sure, right? Like the PNP protects Saron, they protect other criminal organizations, they protect Dina. So how does it all tie together? Because like it has to tie together somehow, right? There's some person that it ties together through or something, right? Because that is a weird situation where you have the president, Vladimir Saron, in Los Pulpos, all being protected by the national police. And so then it becomes like, well, the national police isn't a national police service. They are a national missionary service. They provide security if you pay them, and which means they're extortionists. Like is the entire police force just a really big extortionist organization? Right? Like, yeah, that's the problem, is that we're not going to find out for ages, and it is frustrating. And like every single day it comes out drop by drop by drop, bit by bit by bit, right? So like every day it's like, well, did you hear the stupid thing Dina said today? Or did you hear about the thing that happened today with Dina and so? Or did you hear about, and it's like every day, man, every day. I don't want to talk about her every day, but every day it's like something stupid, right? And so you really don't have a choice but to talk about her. But the thing is that you also like draw in all these other people, right? And then you get to learn about them and their corruption, right? And what stupid things they did. Like Santibanez might be like the dumbest person in all of politics. Santibanez might be the dumbest person in all of politics, and like he makes Dina look like a Rhodes Scholar. Dina is Albert Einstein. Dina is Stephen Hawking next to Santibanez. Like, it's embarrassing. What is going on in Peru? Yeah, that's the other thing, is that like, how much does that dude know? Like, there's a lot that he knows, that we don't know yet. And I don't know when we're going to find it out, but there's a lot that he knows. Right? But to give him, like, they give him 18 months of preventative detention. Okay, which I understand. Give him 18 months to preventative detention. Okay. That's that, like, cool. Right? I don't honestly have a problem with that, because I understand why you would do it. But then, like, you gave Lozano what? 6 months? Not even? I don't. I, I didn't vote. for Kamala. I didn't vote for either one of them because I didn't vote. Augustine Lozano. Yeah, why does Augustine Lozano get 6 months or whatever it was of preventative detention? Right? So it's like, what the hell does Chibolin know that he gets 18 months of preventative detention? But Lozano gets 6 months. Right? Because that to me is the difference between the two, is that like Chibolin knows everything. And Lozano doesn't. Lozano's just a criminal. So you're just a criminal, you get 6 months. But I mean, hey, if you know how everybody else is a criminal, so then you get 18 months. Right? There's so much going on in the corruption that it's hard not to focus on Lima, because that's where the corruption is taking place. And what that does, though, is it does mean that like people do not pay attention to other cities. It does mean that, right? It also creates a separation within like the national society, where like Arequipa does not relate to Lima. Nobody in Arequipa is like, oh yeah, I totally relate with all those Limeños. And like different parts of the country have entirely different realities, right? And we end up not focusing on the shit that's happening in these other places until it starts to impact Lima, because then it starts to hit the national political scene, right? So like we know there are, for instance, like we know there are issues in Iquitos with a lot of things, and especially along the developmental lines, there are huge issues in Iquitos. We know that there's issues in Piura ongoing right now around water supply. We know that there's issues like in places like, or at least some of us know because we got told about it all weekend. We know that there are issues in Guadalupe because like developmental projects just don't get done because they don't know how to do paperwork. We know that there are issues like in other parts of the country that we don't pay attention to because like until they do the corrupt thing that brings them into national politics, we have no idea they exist. For the most part, we don't. And like you can read even like all the major outlets, you can watch the major outlets, they don't talk about it either, unless it's like occasionally like you'll get the Cusco stuff because like, oh, tourists, we don't want to piss the tourists off. If the gringos don't show up, we won't have the gringo money anymore. Right. And that's exactly so I think Sebastian and I might be the same. We might share a brain. We might share a brain. Sebastian, you and I share a brain. That's exactly the reason why we got the terrorism in the first fucking... Yes! Thank you. And as somebody who worked in intelligence, I'm like, when are people going to understand? The more you isolate these places, like... That's how you get extremism. That's why Ayacucho is how Ayacucho is. You isolated Ayacucho for years. You didn't pay attention to Ayacucho for years. And then what happens? You create poverty. And when you create poverty, you create extremism. And when you create extremism, you create extreme criminality because of the poverty as well. So poverty, extremism, and criminality. Poverty creates those two things. Extremism, criminality. You put those two things together, you get terrorism. I haven't heard English with a Quechua accent. I don't think. I don't know that I'm ready for that. Presidents who came to power out of nowhere without prior political experience ended badly. I mean, yeah. I mean, typically that's how that goes. If you don't have experience within politics and you're suddenly like the head of politics, yeah, that's the same for like any industry. Cultivation broth, yeah. But I mean, and the thing is, like, I'm a little concerned, honestly, about like the some of the decisions that have been made by the courts recently in Peru that I think are going to, like, if you look at Antoro, it's going to end up isolating those people, taking away their voice again. And what happens? You take away the voice, you go back to extremist thought. Right? So like I'm concerned about those decisions, not because I'm like, oh yeah, I support those parties, but it's like I know how terrorism works. So don't make decisions that create terrorism. I don't have to worry. It's not my country. Well, will you say the same thing when I'm a citizen? Will you, like, because it's not my country as a resident, so it's not my country living here, right, to you. So does it become my country finally when I'm a citizen? When does it become my country? Or does it only ever become my country if I was born here? When does it become my country? It's a fair question, isn't it? Yes. Then you are a resident. I am a resident. So then it's my country. Do you want to, like, what, see my carne extranjera? Like, what do you want to see? I'm not going to. But I mean, like, what proves to you that it's, yeah, I'm a legal Peruvian resident? This is backfiring on you. Peruvians could not care less. That's why we are in such hell now. I think there are lots of Peruvians who do care. I think the thing is, the Peruvians who do care are tired. Yeah, are tired. They're just tired of it. Nothing's changed for years. Right? They're tired, and like a lot of people have worked for like really hard for years to change Peru. And they worked so hard on it and then watched some politician screw it all up. Oh, so then you changed the standard and you said, I'm only allowed to talk about Peru now if I do it in Spanish or Quechua. Is Imara okay? Does that count too? I just want to make sure. However, you are not talking the Spanish or Quechua that are legal languages here, so you are not so legal.
They're not. All languages are legal.
All languages are legal. You don't get arrested for speaking English.
Quechua and
Yeah,
Spanish
you're talking
and
about
are official.
You're talking about official languages. They're all legal languages. You can even speak German here.
Yeah.
And they started 2 world wars. And you can speak German in this country.
Or Latin.
Or
Latin.
Latin.
School teaching Latin.
Or Latin. Yeah.
Is that a crime?
Or like what else? What other language? You can
It's
speak
a draw moment.
you can speak Mandarin Chinese. There's a huge push to teach a lot of Peruvians Mandarin Chinese right now because of the megaport opening, right? And the
Oh, they
increase
won.
in business with China. So yeah, I know, right? It's just funny to me. Yeah, it's just, but like they're all, but like legal languages. They're all legal languages. I can speak on any language I want.
Oh, you can.
Otherwise, you're gonna have to kick a lot of tourists out. I understand that there's a lot of people though that just want people around the world to know only the touristy stuff. They don't want them to know the other stuff that happens in Peru. Yeah, show him by. No, it's okay. Um, yeah, I'll put on like if anything, like it would, like I do sort of wonder though, and at what point do I do this long enough? Do I live here long enough? Am I a citizen? Like at what point do people go like, oh yeah, you're allowed to do what you
When
want?
you're naturalized,
When you're allowed, you're allowed to talk about Peru.
then you become like a resident,
Yeah,
yeah, you're for some for me. Oh, you are Canadian, but not really.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, this is what I'm wondering. It's like at what point
Racism is
do I
going to
just
be
get
there.
like, oh yeah, you're allowed to talk about Peru because you're intelligent and you're informed and you should just talk about Peru.
2 years.
So if you're listening to pop music in Peru, you are not a real resident.
Do what?
So if you're listening to pop music in Peru, you are not a real resident. I agree.
Pop music?
Yeah, if you
Or
are
reggaeton?
if you are listening to like gringo pop music, you're not a real Peruvian. I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
If it's not Q pop, at a minimum, are you really Peruvian? Like really?
Define Peruvian.
Yeah, this is what it's like. I'm just saying, like, boy, you can take my Taylor Swift out of my cold dead hands. All you Swifties are the same. Around the world, Elizabeth, all of you are the same. You can take my Swift out of my cold dead hands. Yes, exactly. You're all the same. I have a friend who the other night messaged me on here and she said, you need to go live right now. Now I didn't, but I messaged her back and I said, why? She goes, I have huge news. And I was like, what? Are you married? She goes like, no, never. And I said, are you pregnant? She said, no, hell no. And I was like, did you already give birth? she's like, no, I'm going to see Taylor Swift in Toronto. And I'm like, you wanted me to go live so that you can announce that you're going to Taylor Swift in Toronto. This is how Taylor Swift fans are. I needed to go live to announce that she was going to see Taylor Swift in Toronto. Why? But I will stand. I understand a lot of Spanish, but I don't like not all of it. I'm not perfect. I still do translate stuff on here because like either the messages are coming in too quick or something like that. But like, yeah, I'm not perfect at all. No, you don't want to hear me speak Spanish because it is torture. No, I will not go live when Alianza Lima plays either. I'm a disappointed. I don't even know how to put this. I'm sort of a. I'm sort of a Sporting Cristal fan of no fault of my own. Yeah, it's her favorite team
What kind of
was, and the president of Sporting Cristal
fucking corrupt.
is a corrupt dickwad. So
Like all of them, by the way.
But so now it's sort of
But
like
the level of corruption is just getting to everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, FIFA is not. So soccer have been corrupt.
No, she can't be an Alianza Lima fan. I think that's forbidden. I don't know that you can. Are you allowed to have been a Sporting Cristal fan and then become an Alianza Lima fan?
Cristal is younger. The other have more.
Yeah, I know.
So you can go from Alianza Lima to Cristal, but go backwards. I don't know.
But I'd be more inclined to go to Sports Boys. What's the hardest word in Spanish for me to pronounce?
Jugo de naranjas.
Jugo de naranjas. Jugo de naranjas. It's not like a combination of sounds that typically go, I don't know. Upa, upa, upapa.
And the R's.
Punta Negra? Yeah, because if I say it too fast, then I say something that's not nice.
Plegable. Plegable was a very hard word for you.
Yeah, plegable was very hard for me. Plegable. Yeah.
Una silla plegable.
Punta Negra only becomes an issue when I say it too fast.
Yes.
Because then some people think I say pucha and not punta, or puta, not punta. And so it becomes kind of racist if I am in a hurry and talking too fast. Because I don't get the N out. Yes, and Donnie, yes, you did point that out. And I admit that I do it. But it's not intentionally. You have to do a hard N. Yeah, look, man, Elizabeth, I come from a language where if you put a hard N on a particular word, you put a hard N, a hard R, that's very bad. So then you're asking me to put a hard N? You live in Magdalena, but you die for Susanna.
Do you get that?
No, I don't.
It's a song of the Los No Se Quieren, Los No Se Cuantos.
Oh.
You should put music.
I am cute without a beard. I am incredibly cute without a beard. Thank you.
Cuteness is not your problem. No,
cuteness is not my problem. Okay, guys. It's been our hour and a half. I'm going to take off now, and I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back to regularly scheduled tomorrow, so we will do a midday at noon tomorrow, and then the end of day at 6 p.m. And it's going to be Pero Nacional Eve, right? We're going to be on the eve of the shutdowns. So thank you for everybody who followed over the course of the live. Thank you for the likes. Thank you, Lena, for all of the likes, to Donnie for all the likes, Sir for all of the likes, because the right side of my screen was just a constant stream of hearts. Yeah. So thank you. Of course, if you're new here, you can also follow and Johnny's got it going on YouTube too. You can also subscribe on YouTube. That helps. And just interact on with videos. Say what you need to say. Interact with each other because I'm the stupid gringo that shouldn't talk about Peru, but you guys can say whatever you want. Right? So I will see you all tomorrow at noon, and I will be live. Well, it's what I get told, Lena. It's what I get told. So I will see you at noon tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.